Welcome back to Whispers of Strategy. In our last explainer, we journeyed through the first rise of AI, a time of big dreams and some pretty hard lessons. Today, we're moving into the second wave, think mid-70s to the late 80s. This was the era where AI left the university lab and walked right into the boardroom. Businesses were booming, and they had one huge, tantalizing question.
Seriously, just think about that. What if you could capture all the knowledge, all the intuition of the world's best doctor or engineer or chemist and put it in a box, make it available to anyone, anytime? This wasn't just some science fiction fantasy. This was the core promise that drove the entire era. And this single powerful idea, well, it kicked off a technological gold rush.
So, how did they try to do it? The technology at the heart of this revolution was called the expert system. Now, this is really different from the AI we talk about today. Today's AI learns from massive amounts of data. Back then, these systems were more like a living rulebook. Programmers, who they called knowledge engineers, would literally sit down with an expert for months, sometimes years, and try to translate their entire decision-making process into thousands and thousands of simple if-then rules. If the patient has a fever and a rash, then consider measles. And this whole concept of the expert in a box was really AI's first major leap out of the purely academic world. We're seeing a huge shift here, from building machines that could think in an abstract way to building machines that could do specific, really valuable jobs. You might be asking, so why then? Why the late 70s and early 80s? Well, it was kind of a perfect storm. For one, researchers had learned some tough lessons from that first AI winter and decided to focus on more practical goals. At the exact same time, you've got booming industries that were desperate to clone their top experts. And crucially, computers were finally getting cheaper and powerful enough to actually run these complex rule sets. And to top it all off, a new technological rivalry between nations was really starting to heat up. And all of that came together to create this absolute explosion of investment and excitement. This wasn't just a niche academic field anymore. No way. AI was suddenly becoming a very serious, multi-billion-dollar business. And what a boom it was. By 1985, the market just for expert systems, and the special computers you needed to run them, was estimated to be worth over $1 billion. Venture capital was just pouring in, and new AI startups were popping up all over the place. And the thing is, this wasn't just hype. These systems were delivering real, tangible value. Just look at XCon. It was used by Digital Equipment Corporation to configure these incredibly complex computer orders, a job that humans made mistakes on all the time. The system saved the company an estimated $40 million a year. That's a huge number. This was the proof everyone was looking for. AI could make and save a lot of money. This boom went way beyond just corporations. It went global. In 1981, Japan launched this incredibly ambitious project, an almost billion-dollar bet to become the undisputed world leader in AI. And that sent absolute shockwaves through the West. The US, mainly through agencies like DARPA, responded by just doubling down on its own AI funding. It was like a new kind of Cold War, but this one was being fought with silicon chips and lines of code. But you know how these stories go. What goes up must come down. The hype was reaching this incredible, feverish pitch, and this is the part of our story where that unbelievable hype collides with a very painful reality. The bubble was about to burst. And in this right here perfectly illustrates what happened next. It's called the hype cycle. Whenever a new technology comes along, expectations just skyrocket to this crazy, irrational peak. Then reality kicks in, and everything crashes down into what's called the trough of disillusionment. Expert systems were sitting right at the very top of that peak, and believe me, it was a long way down. So why? Why did it all fall apart? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a chain reaction of 4 fatal flaws. First, and this is the big one, the knowledge bottleneck. It was just unbelievably difficult to turn human expertise into code. That made the systems really brittle and hard to scale. They were so complex that changing just one little rule could break 100 others. They also needed these specialized, very expensive computers, and when that hardware market collapsed, it took all the AI companies down with it. And finally, the sheer incredible overhype created expectations that the technology just, well, it couldn't possibly meet them. The biggest problem by far was this knowledge bottleneck. It just turns out that an expert's intuition, that gut feeling, is incredibly hard to write down as a rule. For every rule you create, there are 10 exceptions. For every simple process, there's a complex nuance that just can't be translated into simple if-then logic.
So these systems became these impossibly complex webs, and trying to update one rule could cause unpredictable chaos across the entire thing.
And the fallout from this was just immense. Sure, for a little while, there were winners. Companies like DEC, they really did save millions. But the list of losers, it was much, much longer. Those high-flying AI startups like Symbolics, bankrupt. Japan's massive government-funded project, it pretty much failed. And countless businesses were left holding the bag, stuck with these brittle, expensive systems they couldn't even maintain anymore. And so, right around 1987, the second AI winter began. Funding didn't just shrink, it vanished almost overnight. The term AI itself became toxic in business circles. It was basically a synonym for expensive, overhyped, failed technology. Corporate AI labs were shut down, and the entire industry just went into a deep, deep freeze. But here's the twist in the story. While the entire business world was running away from AI, something really important was happening quietly in the background. This winter, it wasn't an ending. It was a time for reflection and for reinvention. The seeds of the next AI revolution were being planted in the frozen ground. And it's right here, during the so-called death of AI, that the foundations of our modern world were laid. In 1986, an algorithm called backpropagation was popularized, and it finally gave neural networks a practical way to learn from their mistakes. A few years later, Judea Pearl's Bayesian networks gave AI a totally new superpower, the ability to think in probabilities, to reason about an uncertain world, something rule-based systems could never do. And then, in the mid-90s, support vector machines came along, giving us another powerful way to find patterns in really complex data. These quiet breakthroughs, they're the bedrock for everything we have today. So when you look back, the heroes of this era are such a fascinating mix. You've got Edward Feigenbaum, who really was the father of the expert systems that defined the boom. But then you also have these quiet revolutionaries, people like Geoffrey Hinton and Judea Pearl, whose work during the bust ended up paving the way for the AI we all know and use today.
So what's the big lesson from this whole roller coaster of an era? I think it's this. The second wave stumbled because it got the very definition of intelligence wrong. True intelligence isn't about perfectly following a massive, rigid rulebook. It's about learning, it's about adapting, and most importantly, it's about navigating a world that is fundamentally uncertain. And that, of course, brings us right back to today. The story of the expert systems boom and bust is this incredibly powerful cautionary tale. It's about what happens when hype gets too far ahead of reality, and it forces us to ask a really critical question as we live through our own unprecedented AI boom. Are we listening to those lessons, or are we just doomed to repeat the mistakes of AI's last great winter?